If you've lived as a years-long alcoholic and you are now months clean, you will find yourself in a world that you are not familiar with. But stay tuned, and I'll tell you how to navigate through this new world versus the unhealthy plan that Alcoholics Anonymous offers. People will tend to fall into a routine once they migrate into the adult world. They go to work, come home, may exercise or not, will catch some social media or television, and then repeat that cycle for the next 4 spins to the weekend, where they may go out with friends or entertain their children with baseball and badminton, sleep a little later, rinse off the grind only to start it again shortly. The alcohol largely decreases once past the age of 25, as work, family, and chores become the norm, which has been normal since man strolled out of the cave. But the routine of an alcoholic is an entirely different scenario. Most of us who did gain recovery will have a remembrance of disbelief of what our lives once were. Although it has been almost 2 decades clean for myself, the images of destruction are as clear today as they were in action those many years ago, waking to the hangover every morning, to the point where the sickness was normal, going to work with elevator rides that caused mild vertigo, the pins and needles in the kidneys and liver, eating only half a lunch with a continued Gatorade infusion, the lethargy of the afternoon until the whistle blows you back to the liquor store where the guy at the counter knows you by name, the first beer at 5:30 and the last at midnight 30. While everyone else is recovering on the weekends, you are only continuing the physiological assault. Why stop sucking the hops at midnight 30 when there's no alarm waiting for its ring in the AM? The binge lasts until well into the small hours. You sleep intermittently, the rest of the living dead, waking periodically to dry heave in the bathroom. And you pop the bottle cap with the sunrise, alternating between passing out and coming to slow consciousness with that illness of the long-term alcoholic. That was my life for the last years of my 13-year addiction to the friendship with John Barleycorn. I could go on about all the stupid occurrences that happen when in this toxic alliance, the bad women, and fellow kinship with those like you, and all the drama that goes with the brethren of the addict. But the story's the same with everyone who has a substance abuse problem. Then one day I stopped. On January 22nd, 2009, I had about 6 or 7 beers in me. I looked in the mirror and saw a harrowed middle-aged man of 40. I looked at my passport photo, taken a year earlier, which resembled the same. I knew that my kidneys and liver were now being damaged from the sensation of tiny knives twisting in them. I had 3 beers left in the fridge that night. I got up, grabbed them, and tossed the cans in the garbage. At the time, I couldn't imagine a week without alcohol, let alone the rest of my life. It seemed impossible, but what was more impossible was the way my life existed in this dark alliance with Johnny B. I had tried to moderate my drinking in the past. I had tried to quit twice. 3rd time would be a charm. I put my 357 with a bullet in the chamber on the dining room table. I thought about a line from the movie The Shawshank Redemption. Get busy living or get busy dying. And I didn't eat the bullet. I made it to sobriety. The first 5 days were hell, the next 40 not much better, and the cravings were frequent to the 6-month mark, what I call phase 1, 2, and 3 in my created program of recovery to cure. The protracted withdrawal syndrome lasted the full 2 years, but eventually the wave from the tsunami receded. But my old world had been swept away. I was now looking at a land I didn't recognize, and that land was normality. There are positives and negatives to this brave new terrain in which you will now walk. And that's what it is, new terrain. My addiction lasted as an official alcoholic for 13 years, but there was sporadic drinking for 9 years prior to even that. Alcohol was my anesthetic since my high school graduation party, which, as I described in other episodes, did not go well for me at all. The drinking then transformed to only a weekend part of my life. Then it migrated to a few nights during the week as well. It waxed, it waned, on and off for years before the demon finally drove its stakes into the ground and claimed the land as his. What I pictured in my mind during the first few months of withdrawal was my life before John Barleycorn introduced himself. That would have been around the age of 17. I lived a perfectly non-alcoholic life when I was 17 and prior, so I could return to that life, even though 23 years of booze had passed under that bridge. The first thing I noticed once the tsunami returned to the sea was the terrific feeling of not being sick every single morning. What it was like to not have a small knife in my kidney or liver. No vertigo in the elevator rides anymore in the hospitals I worked. The sensation of not only eating a full lunch, but even a breakfast as well. And the regretful knowledge of how did I do this to myself every day in my not so distant past. It was a 6-month mark that I really gazed around at my new world though. The cravings were starting to become less and less frequent with a drop in intensity as well. The daily pain in my kidneys and liver were now gone. I didn't have insomnia as much, nor the horrific nightmares that I had in previous months. The beer advertisements and the neon bar signs no longer made my mouth water. I was on a physical fitness program as well as a nightly emotional meditative program. I was now ready to return to the world. The problem was, it was a world in which I was unfamiliar with. The first thing you'll feel is an incredible amount of time seems to have dropped into your hands, for you're not spending every night arm in arm with John Barleycorn any longer, which is why I state in my Reinvention of Self program, one must begin a physical fitness regimen, emotional meditative routine, as well as other self-advancement hobbies after the completion of second phase, which ends at 45 days sober. Many former alcoholics state that their lives are suddenly boring once they quit it. They shouldn't be. Your life should now be one of continuous advancement. I say, as I say in all my episodes, that Alcoholics Anonymous is not the answer for where to spend these newly granted idle hours, as it's a negative environment. It would be a place to go in the early phases of withdrawal. But if you're in AA every night after second phase clears, it is a place that you should be weaning off of as you start the holistic return to an even better version of yourself than before you met JB. Your new world shouldn't resemble another version of the same darkness. You may be comfortable with these people in AA since they are like you, but comfort doesn't always mean healthy. I firmly believe this is why the AA member makes the rooms his life, because he's afraid to step into that new world. The rooms are the safe houses. It becomes an us versus them mentality. The former alcoholic and the rest of normal society that isn't. You haven't explored the trail that walks through the normal world. And yes, you're going to have to cut through the brush to find it. I kept myself in largely isolation the first 2 years after I threw those last 3 beers away. For what social event had I been in prior to sobriety where I wasn't consuming, even before to what I give as the year the official addiction began? Alcohol was the only means where I could socialize, a syndrome that went all the way back to a social anxiety disorder created in high school. I was supposed to intermingle straight? Talk to a girl without my Dutch uncle buddy? No way. Here's how you deal with a disorder, as I called the one I had created in high school. This is where I veer from the entire medical profession whose answer to disorder is a script. You don't take a pill to mask the disorder. You developed a disorder, true, so you undevelop it. I quit drinking in 2009. The first real party I went to was just under 11 months sober. A small work party where I already knew everyone. But the first real extravaganza of people I knew as well as many I didn't was in 2012. It was a hospital Christmas party where I was contracting in Sitka, Alaska. I wasn't afraid I would drink. I was just filled with anxiety at being around people sober. But I had finally had enough of the isolation and forced myself to go. I would stay in the entertainment hall for 20 minutes and then sit in my car outside for a half hour. I spent more time in my car than at the event, but I was popping in and out of the crowd, so no one knew of my internal angst. It really was like living on planet Earth as a Martian. I had been raised in a completely different world, but something was developing, which will develop in yourself as well if you follow my reinvention program of physical fitness, emotional health, and continuous advancement of self. You will start to gain confidence of being comfortable in your own skin. I stated in a previous episode that the same town of Sitka, I gave a myofascial release seminar to a few hundred people one night. And the recording I later viewed showed someone of command demeanor. I was solving my childhood and, more importantly, beginning to negate that disorder. The constant anger that had held me was beginning to abate as well. True, I had reasons for this anger, as I was in a profession that is completely corrupt most of the time. How many street fights had I been in with hospital administrators or corrupt managers in my field of physical therapy? But the mind was now gaining a calmness, not a continuous edginess on hair trigger release. Stoicism was beginning to evolve in my mind. For the world has always been the world in which most will not do the right thing, in all professions. Instead of being in a rage at those who are operating unethically, in lieu of threatening to punch a director in the face for telling me to operate in this fashion, I began to guide my life with indifference toward them. I was learning how to navigate the world without the aid of Johnny B. The only way to gain adaptation to this new world is to venture into it. And that's the problem with AA. They may work in the world, but at Punch-Out, the members run to AA for refuge. You are not an alcoholic anymore. You should be able to intermingle with the rest who never were as well. Heresy, I know, AA. A month later, I went to another lounge get-together. This time I didn't go into my car once. As said, it is a simple principle of adaptation. The more I did it, the more I realized I could. Not to mention that without the continence of 3 out of 4 sheets to the breeze, I was a much nicer person. People actually wanted to approach me. You will find that stoic mindset acts as a magnet. The stronger you become, the more you will attract good people. If they ask you why you don't drink, you just tell them, I used to be an alcoholic. I'm not anymore. Then you raise your glass of soda water with a lime. The new terrain is washed clean by the tsunami, as I said, but this means you can build a brand new neighborhood. Part of being transformed into the new world is that you'll occasionally catch glimpses of pictures of your old one, and some of those photos will portray old friends and acquaintances. People from that world were like you, and many still are. I stated before in a previous episode that I had to leave behind a few longtime friends from that world. One was like a brother from a very hardcore and tight-knit military team. If you had told me at 24 that he would one day be an ex-friend, I would have punched you in the face. But he is a chronic alcoholic to this day. The last I saw him, years ago, he was beginning to develop the obvious signs of Korsakoff syndrome, common in longtime alcoholics. Many of these symptoms raise their heads in the form of being insufferable. I would regress into my highly negative past just being around him as he popped open his first beer at 9 in the morning. I had to let him go. You have to think of this new terrain exactly as I described, a clean and sparkling new shore. It wasn't that I couldn't have had a collection of acquaintances and friends those first few years after I quit the substance abuse. It's just I didn't know how, and I was afraid of learning how. I began to follow a philosophy of only letting positive people into my circle. As I was a transient medical contractor, many times those friendships lasted only a few months. Some lasted longer, and some exist today. But I adopted the mindset that anyone I would associate with would only result in a positive experience. Everywhere I go in my new world, I try to promote this, whether it's an after-work get-together or just talking to the vegetable stand lady in Guatemala. By nature, I'm a loner, that is for sure. I do revel in a great deal of solitude, but I am no longer in a state of fear of going to social events. I can just as easily fit in a large after-work Christmas party filled with strangers as I can being alone in the mountains. I adapt to any arena now. You train yourself to be a beacon of kindness to everyone you come in contact with. Cheerfulness goes a long way in an uncheerful world. You follow Jim Rohn's advice of making sure the people you surround yourself with are of high quality, and that you're high quality to them, and you handle confrontations with the species that always seems to want to be in them with as much gentleness as you can, as long as it allows you to still get your point across. For anything you're angry about, will it really be important 100 years from now? But this is your new world, ex-alcoholic. It's scary, I know. But if you force yourself to live in it instead of hiding in the rooms, one day it won't be a new world any longer. It'll just be the now regular world you live in. Now, if you'd like some more about why Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't enhance your life, go ahead and click on the playlist card at the end of the video and check out my more detailed guidebook for those who want a fulfilled sober life, the small book, How I Beat Alcoholism and Why Alcoholics Anonymous Doesn't Work. Link is on the video description as well as the channel page banner. And remember, you made the contract, now keep it. Be sober at sundown, and I will see you at the next sunrise.